Hello. Welcome everyone to the Albuquerque Journal's video chat with New Mexico Workforce Solutions Secretary Bill McCamley. I'm Karen Moses, editor of the Journal, and with me today is Journal business reporter Stephen Hamway.
Happy to be here.
We appreciate Secretary McCamley taking time out from his busy schedule, which has been hectic to say the least these last 7 weeks. With the COVID-19 pandemic causing the closure of all non-essential businesses and organizations, tens of thousands of New Mexicans have found themselves without jobs. It is Workforce Solutions' job to process their unemployment claims. So a system that was built to handle hundreds of claims a week is now tasked with handling tens of thousands. Adding to that number are independent contractors who were able to start applying this past Sunday. And to make the situation even more challenging is the need for safety. And that has forced the offices to be closed, again, forcing everything to be on the phone or on the internet. Last week, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham held a news conference addressing some of these issues. Now, I would like to welcome Secretary McCamley and ask him to start this off really by telling us, so how's it working? How's it going? Have there been some changes that you've been able to implement? Secretary McCamley, welcome.
Thank you. And so yes, just like we talked about in the press conference last week, Workforce Solutions has been working round the clock to update our systems and increase personnel so that we can do a better job of talking with New Mexicans, hearing their issues, and process their claims. So at the end of the day, we're putting money in their pocket. That is what we're trying to do. If people can stay home, if people can practice social distancing, then they can stay safe. That is the most effective way for us to fight this virus. And the governor has been crystal clear and very passionate about her want to make sure that every New Mexican stays as healthy and safe as possible. So for us, that means we have to do everything that we can do to make sure that people can get through the unemployment process if they've been unfortunate enough to lose hours or lose their job. So what are the 4 things that we've been really working on to make our process better? The first is what we call auto adjudication. So if you get into unemployment, you're going to have to go through a process by which our workers go through all of the fields that you entered and make sure everything is in order. We also have to make sure that the wages that you give us match up with the wages from your employer. Remember, unemployment is a relationship. Employers pay payroll taxes into a trust fund. Then people who need those benefits are able to get that money from that fund on the back end. So we need to make sure that the numbers match up for the employers and the employees. One thing we're asking employers to help us with is if we reach out to you, if you can get back to us as soon as we possibly can, as soon as you possibly can, with the wage records that we're looking for, that's going to speed up the process for your workers. Another thing that we've tried to do is what we call, as I said, auto adjudication. So before the COVID-19 situation, we would go through one by one with our workers every single application that would come in. What we've started to do is put people into groups and approve them group by group by group. An example of that is people that are now furloughed. So in traditional unemployment, you are considered separated, which is the unemployment term for being laid off, as completely not with your company anymore. Well, furloughed people were really not very common, so we could handle that one by one, except now during COVID, furloughed people are a lot more common. And so we have put those folks into groups where they're saying, hey, look, I'm not making any money, I'm at 0 hours, but I still think I'm employed and my employer still thinks I'm employed, but we're saying yes to that and we're approving group by group. So we started our first process for that 2 weekends ago. We were able to approve about 19,000 people in a weekend. And so that process is now ongoing and it's making us able to be able to process a lot more people a lot faster. Secondly, we've added people to our phone lines. Obviously, one of the biggest complaints that we've got is, hey, I'm having trouble getting through on the phone when I've got a question. We've actually added 145 people on our phones. Most of them are from other parts of state government, either from our department or from other departments that have agreed to help. So the Human Services Division, Taxation and Revenue, Cultural Affairs, Transportation, all of them have had people that have volunteered to help with our phones because they understand this is where the need is. We've crash-trained them and they're able to help answer our phones. Furthermore, we've added 80 staff to help with this adjudication process that I talked about, how we process people going through. While we have been able to get a lot of people done group by group by group, we still have claims that are coming in that we need to have someone physically touch that claim coming in to fix things and make sure everything's in order. So we've added a lot more people to help with that. And pretty much everybody doing adjudications is working mornings, evenings, and Saturdays. We've offered overtime as much as people want to take it, and they are taking it. So we've added more people, and that's speeding up the regular process. Last thing we've tried to do is really emphasize our online process. If you go to jobs.state.nm.us, you can both apply for a claim and do your weekly certifications. Those certifications are important. It's something I want to mention here because we still have some folks that we could give money to, but if you don't certify every week that you're still not working, we are not allowed by the federal government to give you money. So that certification process is extremely important. But we've put a lot of effort into making sure that our website continues to stay robust and working. You've seen a lot of places around the country where their websites have either gone down or they've been so slow, they've asked people to go on at 2 and 3 in the morning. We haven't had that issue. So with all of those strategies we're going in, we're starting to catch up with people's claims and make sure people have money in their pockets so they can stay home and stay safe.
Secretary, you talked about all of the people you've added to help with this effort. Do you have the numbers of how many you started off with, like in your call center, and how many you now have working on this?
Sure. So the issue is we would have people in our unemployment office that would be doing calls and people that were doing adjudications. When we would do what we would call all hands on deck, we were able to get a little bit more than 80 people that would be able to answer the phone at the start of this situation. Between everybody we've put in now, if everybody's answering the phone, we're at 236 people all in. And so we've been able to almost triple the amount of folks that we've got answering the phones. But once again, I'd really like to emphasize, if you can go online, if you have the ability to use our website, please do so. It's going to be better for you. It's going to be better for us. And it's going to leave those phone lines open for those folks who maybe don't have the web capability or internet capability that other people will have. Another thing that we found is that, someone will go online and they'll complete 95% of their application, but people are sitting at home and they're worried about things. And so people will literally call and wait for, 5, 6, 7 hours on the phone just to get someone on the phone to tell them they've done it right. We have done an online video at our YouTube site. We've got videos for both how to apply and how to certify. They are step-by-step instructions to let people know what to do. And if you would try that first and see if that gets you where you need to be, it would really get rid of your need to call in and free up our phone lines for other folks. The other thing I'll say about the phones is we've really asked people, if possible, can you call on the day that relates to the last digit of your social security number? So 0 to 3 call on Monday, 4 to 6 call on Tuesday, and 7 to 9 call on Wednesday, with Thursday and Friday left over if you weren't able to get through on those days or if you missed your day. Our perception of how that's being followed is mixed. And if people could really try to follow that, it would reduce our volume and let us help more people in a better way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. To date, more than 123,000 New Mexicans have filed initial unemployment claims since the pandemic started. That's a record number that is significantly higher than the state has ever seen. While the governor and her administration were considering what restrictions to put in place to protect New Mexicans, did they do any projections about how many jobs might be temporarily lost? And how did those projections match up with what your department anticipated?
So the first thing I'll say about this is the goal of all of these health protections is to do that, is to keep people safe and keep people healthy. These social distancing measures that we talked about have proven very, very effective in saving lives and stopping our health facilities from being overrun. We need to be able to get the virus under control before we look at, opening the economy back up. As national figures have said, as well as our health officials said, the virus controls how we make that move forward, not anything else. So the goal of the governor has been to keep people safe and keep people healthy. Going from there, this situation is unprecedented. We're all learning how to move forward on this as the situation evolves. And as we're learning how to do better. Our goal and our promise here at the Workforce Solutions Department is to keep working hard at getting New Mexicans the benefits that they need, but also on the back end, here's something that I'd like to talk about as well, making sure we have the opportunity to offer skills training and education so that once work does start back up, New Mexicans have the opportunity to get these jobs in the 21st century economy. Like 97% of the jobs nationally in America since the end of the Great Recession require you to have more than a high school degree. They require you maybe not to have a bachelor's degree, but an associate's degree or a certificate. We really need to work on going along with these programs we were working on before the COVID epidemic and making sure people have the opportunity to get those pieces of education they need to get these jobs. We also need to work at doing a good job of making sure our workplaces, when people start getting hired back, are safe for customers and safe for workers. Those are the things that we're really working on. We're learning as we go. And we've done everything we can to make sure that we are updating our systems and processing people as fast as we can. And we are starting to catch up. Things are getting better. But I would also like to say, once again, for people who have gone through this process and are frustrated, I am very, very sorry for the situation. This has been tough on everybody. We hear you, we feel you. And you know, I've gotten some people that say, hey, please don't treat me like a number. I can promise you, our staff are working as hard and as fast as we can to treat everyone with respect and dignity, but also make the process faster.
So there were no projections really done ahead of time. Is that correct in terms of the first, obviously the motivation here is keep everybody safe. That's the priority. And so it was moving that direction and let's get that taken care of. And at the time, there really wasn't anybody estimating, okay, this is going to mean 150,000 people or more out of jobs. We've got to figure out how to take care of them. Or is that kind of a second step? I guess that's a follow-up to that question.
Ma'am, the question that we need to answer is how do we keep people safe and how do we keep people healthy? And we've tried to do that as best we can in this administration through these health orders. I don't think anyone could have predicted any of the situation that came out now. So our job is to really respond as the situation evolves to the best way that we can, and we are doing that.
Thank you. So we have a two-part question from a self-employed person who is qualified for weekly unemployment benefits under the COVID-19 PUA program, although they're still awaiting their payment. And they ask, the effective date on their claim is listed as April 26th. However, they stated in their application that their last day of work was March 10th. Will they get their benefits back to their last day of work? And then secondly, they've spoken to some people who are getting an additional $600 a week from federal funds. Is that a separate application process, or will that be added to their weekly payment?
Right. So to answer your first question, claims can be backdated to where people started losing their funds. So the best example I can probably give is on March 18th, the governor ordered all people working in all spas to close, right? So the next day, March 19th, was the first day maybe a contract massage therapist might not have been able to get their money. So you can backdate your claim to that date that you got separated from your work. For the person who you talk about, I'm sorry if the date was added incorrectly. It can get fixed. That person should hopefully try to call our call center and then talk to someone who can fix the issue. The good thing is that they're in the system and they will be getting paid. And then just making sure that we have the ability to backdate that is something we're going to have to do to correct that moving forward. But that person should be in the system, and they're going to have to certify once again every single week, just like the people in the standard UI unemployment system moving forward. The second question was the extra $600 a week. So the answer is no, you don't have to do anything extra. From March 29th, from the week of March 29th through the end of July, everyone receiving at least $1 in unemployment will get an additional $600 benefit for those weeks that they are receiving those benefits. And that happens automatically. There's nothing else that you have to do on that. Now that's for all three programs. So that's for standard unemployment. That's for the self-employed people and contractors and gig workers under pandemic unemployment assistance. And that's for the people who are getting extended benefits. That's the other thing that the CARES Act did, was add an additional 13 weeks of eligibility for unemployment. In regular unemployment, your eligibility runs out after 26 weeks. And we did have some folks that were contacting us say, hey, look, my eligibility ran out in February or March or early April, and I'm obviously having a tough time finding a job now. Can I get into this program? And the answer as of last weekend now is yes. You can fill out a little form for extended benefits, The other thing about extended benefits is from here on out, if you from here on out have reached that 26th week where you would normally not be eligible, it will automatically extend you moving forward.
Speaking of the $600, we've had a few people contact us, and there are instances in which an applicant does not qualify for state benefits, but are there instances where they might qualify for the $600 federal checks, and can you describe those instances?
Yeah, so you have to qualify for one of the unemployment programs first before you can get the extra $600 check. So as I stated, you have to either qualify for unemployment the traditional way, you have to qualify for the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, which is for mostly those self-employed 1099 workers out there, gig economy contractors, or you have to have had your benefits extended. The $600 is just for people that get into that program. I would also like to say, though, that because the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program started on Sunday, I would really like to clarify how that works. So if you are working as a contractor and you apply for Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, you will be made monetarily ineligible for regular unemployment. And that's part of the first step of the process. Once you get that letter, there should be, once that goes through, an automatic part of your online system that allows you to fill out an extra form. We just have some personal information we ask, answer some questions, and then have you upload some tax documents. However, we do have some folks out there, and I'll once again bring up the massage therapists because that's what I'm hearing the most of. They may have worked in the past 18 months as a part-time worker, making W-2 salaries, but get most of their money from contracts, working at other places that pay them on contract. If you qualify for the regular standard process, we are forced by the federal government to process you under that standard process. So if you do qualify, even at the minimum amount, that's where we have to make sure we process you. You can't choose to go into the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program if you qualify for standard unemployment first. Hello?
Hold on, we had some technical difficulties.
Okay.
Are we okay now? Okay, so we have a teacher who is a retired teacher, but they're also a consultant. And so what's happened is they have lost all of their consulting business because of the pandemic. But their retirement check is higher than the 461. They don't qualify for the state unemployment. Mm-hmm. Now, because they lost that revenue from their consulting, would they qualify for the 600 or not?
The answer is no, and let me explain why. When you apply for unemployment, we look at your wage data. So in traditional unemployment, we'll take a look at the data you give us from your wages, and we'll, like I said, match it up with your previous employer. So we know how much you made in the last 18 months. Our staff will then use that to calculate what is called a maximum weekly benefit amount. And that maximum weekly benefit amount can range from $88 at the low end to $461 at the high end, right? So depending on how much you've worked, which means depending on how much your employers have paid into the system, you'll qualify for an amount that's calculated based on that situation, because the more you've worked, the more that's been paid in, the more you should get. You can't make over that $461 benefit if you get the maximum benefit. You can, however, if you make under that benefit, apply for unemployment for the remainder. So let's say I apply for unemployment or pandemic unemployment assistance, and the system says, we're going to get you $450 a week. You've worked a lot. You're kind of near the high end. $450 is your number. As I don't work at all, I'll be able to get the $450 a week. And until the end of July, I'll be able to collect the $600 on top of that. So I'll be getting $1,050 a week. However, let's say I go get a part-time job at a grocery store, stocking shelves. If I make $300 that week, I have to report that on my certification, but I will still be eligible for the $150. That's the difference between my maximum benefit and what I'm making. If I even get $1 out of that, then I am eligible for the extra $600 on the back end. However, if I make more than my weekly benefit amount, so if I make more than $450, even if it's $451, I have to report that. I don't get anything. And here's the issue. If you collect that money without reporting it and we find out about it and you collect unemployment, that's fraud. It's actually a crime, and we're going to have to ask for that money back. We're going to ask for a penalty. We will probably put what we call penalty weeks onto your claim. So if you have to go back on unemployment again, we won't let you do that right away. And for really bad situations, the Office of the Inspector General at the U.S. Department of Labor has been known to pick up really bad folks and possibly take them to court. So that's the situation regarding your teacher. Unfortunately, if he or she does make over that maximum amount, they cannot apply for unemployment.
Okay, thanks.
Excellent. Secretary, you've pointed out that Workforce Solutions has successfully processed unemployment claims for tens of thousands of New Mexicans. What percentage of New Mexicans who have attempted to file a claim would you estimate have been able to do so successfully?
Sure. And this is a very complicated question, so I'd like to take a few minutes to kind of go through it in general. I pulled the numbers as of yesterday morning. So from March 15th to April 29th, we have processed a total, we have received a total of 141,156 claims for every single type of issue that's come in. That's standard unemployment, that's folks who are applying under pandemic unemployment assistance, and that's for people who have filed extended benefits. Of those total claims, as of yesterday morning, 85,801 are now receiving payment. 12,500 of them were ineligible. We've had in that week, this new week, 22,896 people that were new. So new claims come in. It generally takes a week for you to go in and get your money the next week because you have to certify, right? We have 12,405 awaiting adjudication. We actually have 4,624 people that could be getting money, but they haven't certified. And that's one of the challenges that we really have to do is make sure we're getting the word out. You have to certify, you have to certify, you have to certify. Because a lot of people are not familiar with the process. And if you certify and everything else is good, you should be able to get your money that week. We still have some folks that aren't doing that. We need to do a better job, and we're working very hard on that to get the word out on that. We've actually had 1,922 people straight up denied, mostly for some of these overpayment situations that you're talking about. We had 1,000 people we're still waiting on outstanding information. We have some claims that come in where we need to get payment information from the Department of Defense or another state if you've worked cross state lines and that sort of thing. So what does that mean in terms of percentages? According to those numbers, 60.5% of all of our applications as of yesterday morning were actually getting money. 16.1% of those were new, so we can't give them their money yet. 8.8% of them are awaiting adjudication. 8.9% have been deemed ineligible for monetary or non-monetary reasons. 3.2% are actually people we could be giving money to, but they're not certifying. And about 2.3, 2.4% have either been straight up denied or we're waiting for information. So of all the people that we can give money to, that we are legally allowed to do, we're up at about 90% in terms of being able to make sure people have money in their pockets. I would also like to say that as of this morning, because I got the updated information, 45% of the people that have applied for pandemic unemployment assistance, and remember that just started on Sunday, they are receiving payment. This is one of the smoothest rollouts of pandemic unemployment assistance in the country. And while we're actually still one of the first states to do this, we took a little longer than another state, a few other states, but those folks a lot of times are just taking the applications. One of the reasons we took a little bit longer was to make sure not only could we take applications, but we could start processing people and getting checks into their pockets ASAP. I am extremely proud of the folks at Workforce Solutions on this topic. It has been one of the smoothest rollouts. Our website has not crashed. Money's getting into people's pockets. And our folks have really stepped up to the plate. Our IT people have worked so hard to get this done. Our folks worked literally round the clock to make sure we could get this up as soon as we possibly could. And the results are now showing.
Secretary, just to make absolutely sure, the numbers that you listed, those don't include folks that might have called and been unable to get through or might have begun an application and were unable to finish for whatever reason, correct?
Those are all the applications that we have received for all of the programs.
Does he have the other number?
Just to make sure, among the 40-odd% that you mentioned, how many applications is that?
Uh, so the total amount of applications received as of yesterday morning was 141,156.
Yep.
Of those, 85,801 are receiving money. And the rest of them are either people that we are adjudicating, so we're processing, people that haven't certified, new applications. Actually, the majority of those, 22,896, are actually new. And so we can't give them the money yet because we require them to certify first. And the rest of them have either been denied or we are waiting on outstanding information.
Secretary, you had mentioned that the rollout of the independent contractor system has been going very well. Do you have a number or a breakout of how many of, you said 45% are actually getting the money?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the number of those who applied and how much is getting the money under that program? Is that part of your 145,000?
Right. So I actually have the numbers from yesterday where it shows 41%. I'm sorry, I don't have the ones for today that show 45%. But as of yesterday, we had 14,177 applications for pandemic unemployment assistance. Of those, as of yesterday, 5,810 of them were receiving payment. And that number actually jumped today in terms of percentage, and we expect that to continue to increase because most of the people that we're going to apply actually applied on Sunday and Monday. We are going to get more as we go out the week and as we go out through the weeks. But the ability for us to process those is catching up extremely quickly with the folks that have applied already.
Thank you for clarifying, Secretary. So we've got a couple of questions from readers here. And the first one is, they write, I left my job because I was concerned about catching the virus, but was not officially laid off. Do I qualify for state or federal unemployment or both?
So that's going to depend. Did you leave willingly or were you laid off? We have been trying to be fairly flexible with people that are saying, hey, I lost my job because of COVID-19. However, under traditional unemployment, it is really important to know that difference because if you leave a job, you are generally not able to get unemployment if you can't explain what the good cause is. And that good cause is a legal term. It means there was a reason that staying in that job was bad and you can prove it. So that's usually reasons like there was abuse in the job and I can prove it. The workplace safety conditions weren't good and I was actually dangerous when I was there, that sort of thing. In unemployment, you generally have to be laid off. Now, in this situation with COVID, there's been a lot of people that have been furloughed, but that's something that the employer tells us, yeah, we're not paying them anymore, and that's not an issue. So this is an issue that's actually going to come up pretty soon as people are now offered their jobs back, right? So you have a lot of businesses out there that are getting this Paycheck Protection Program, which is a loan from the federal government that allows you to pay for hard expenses like salaries, like rent, et cetera, and so on, but you have to spend it in the next 8 weeks. So a lot of folks are saying, hey, look, we need you to come back to work. So unless there's a good cause, you are generally not allowed to refuse that call back to work. And just because you might be getting more money on unemployment than your job, that's not good cause. And the federal government has also been pretty clear that says you may be scared to go back to work because of COVID-19. That's not good cause either. However, we're working very hard and hopefully we'll have this document out in the next few days, talking about what guidance we want to give to employees and employers about this process. We do want to make sure that employers are working very hard to make sure their workplaces are safe for their workers and their customers. But we also want to make sure that workers understand what these conditions are in terms of going back to work and the fact that if you're not going to go back, you're going to have to prove to us that there was a very serious condition that stopped you from going back.
That segues into our next question from a reader here who writes, as an employer, I furloughed several employees. When the shutdown lifts, I expect to call them back, but some have said they don't plan to return until the $600 weekly checks end on July 31st. Are they still eligible for unemployment even though I want to hire them back?
Right. So once again, that answer is no. if you are offered a job back, especially if it's the one you were doing before and you refuse and your reason is I'm making more on unemployment, that is not going to be considered a good cause and your unemployment could be taken away. I mean, the past wouldn't be taken away, but your ability to get in the future would be, to clarify.
So do employers have to certify that, or how does that work?
Right. So in the past, we actually have an email address that people will send to us. We call it a tips and leads email address. However, we're working very hard to actually, because we imagine there's going to be a lot more employers talking to us about this, we are working very hard to develop a new way for employers to contact us. So that's still in the works.
A follow-up question on the earlier question about you were explaining how if you furloughed, you need to come back to work. But it also is the same, so that let's say I'm an employee, I'm at work, and I mean, people are pretty safe, but I'm living with an elderly parent, and so I'm very concerned about keeping them safe. And so I've decided that it's better for me to leave my job. I've not been laid off, but I'm leaving my job because of my concern over the pandemic. Now, from what you're saying, I'm hearing that person probably does not qualify for unemployment. Is that correct?
Well, we're still working on the guidance for that with the health department, because we understand there's probably going to be a couple of reasons that people are going to not want to go back to work. The first being, hey, are the conditions at the workplace safe? So we're working with our OSHA office under Secretary Kenny in the Department of the Environment to really help develop guidance for employers so they can make sure that their workplaces are sanitized, that there's social distancing put into place, that there are provisions for masks, whatever in that industry the guidance is. We want to make it very clear for employers that, hey, you should be doing these sorts of things to make sure that your employees and your customers are safe. The second thing, though, is going to be health issues. And there are going to be some underlying health issues that our appeals process, which is the group that eventually makes the decision on determining whether there's good cause or not, is good enough. So we are working with the health department to really figure out what those specifics are going to be. And we're working with them to figure out, okay, is this also going to include people that might be living in your house as well? We expect some guidance on that to be out very soon.
Okay, thank you. We had several of our folks who actually wrote us questions, and they had kind of suggestions on their own. They've tried to navigate the system and it's been difficult. So they've said, well, here's some ideas for you. So I'm just curious if you've implemented a couple of them or not, or why not. So one wrote that she said last week, when they couldn't get through, Workforce Solutions actually asked them to leave their number and they were called back and it worked very well. This week, it didn't happen. Was there a change, or are you still trying to work that out? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so what she's talking about is called a call queue. And here's how that works. Up until the COVID situation started, we had 300 phone lines for our call center. But because our calls, there weren't that many of them coming in, everybody that called was able to get into one of those 300 lines at any one time, right? And they were to be able to say, hey, we don't have someone, because if we've got 60 people answering the phones and 300 phone lines, there's going to be 230 lines available for you to wait or for us to give you a call back, right? Well, obviously, we've gotten a lot more phone calls since the COVID-19 situation started. And so that's kind of overwhelmed those lines. Now, I will say we've doubled the amount of phone lines that we have available. So we went from 300 to 600. And as I've talked about previously in this interview, we've increased almost triple the amount of people that we have on the phones that can answer calls. So that not only makes that queue bigger, but it also makes sure that there's more lines available as we have more people talking with folks calling in so they can get off faster and new lines can open up. However, what we found is that we're still getting a lot of calls. Even as we've expanded the lines, even as we've expanded the amount of workers we have, we're still getting a lot of phone calls coming in. And there are some situations like the person that you were talking about where they may not get into one of those 600 open lines during that time. We would suggest that people try calling on Thursdays and Fridays. What we see is Monday is always our busiest day. Even as we've asked people to call in based on the last digit of their social security number, which should in theory really even out Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, everybody calls in on Monday. Now there's a lot of people calling in to do certifications. And that's one of the things we're really trying to ask about. If you can go online and do your certification, and once again, we have a step-by-step instructional video on our YouTube site on how to do that. you're going to free up those phone lines for the people that have to call in. But what we found is Monday is always our busiest day. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday actually go down from there. But I also want to talk specifically about, I know people are saying, okay, you have all these calls coming in. What has been the result of that? So let me give you some numbers. I pulled the numbers for the calls that we were offered. So the amount of calls that we've got on Monday and Tuesday this week. So the 27th and 28th of this week. So on Monday, we had 231,249 calls offered to us. On Tuesday, we had 130,497,000. So as you can see, there's already a lot less people calling in on Tuesday than there are on Monday. And that tends to go down throughout the week as well. We handled on Monday, the 27th, 5,770 calls. And we handled 5,778 calls this Tuesday. So we're up, nearing 6,000 calls 6,000 conversations we're able to have per day. Let's go back a month. March 30th, 2020 was our busiest day. That was the day after the CARES Act was passed. And unfortunately, the federal government didn't really tell people that were self-employed, hey, look, getting this isn't like turning on a light switch. It's going to take a while. So a lot of people thought, I'm going to get my money right now. And we obviously weren't ready to stand up that program yet. On Monday, the 30th of March, a month ago, we had 673,840 calls offered to us that day. We had 378,036 calls offered to us on Tuesday, the 31st. How many conversations did we have? Well, that Monday we had 4,137. And on Tuesday, we've had 3,380. So as we've seen more people get into the process, combining with the more phone lines we have, the increased phone lines we have, as well as more people on the phones, we've had less people having to call in, and we've had more people able to answer those phones. So you can see over a month how that process has improved and how we've been able to take care of more people. Now, the governor is not going to be satisfied until we take care of everybody. So we've still got work to do. And we're training the last of our group to get on the phones this week. And we're going to be hopefully getting all hands on deck, starting next week to be able to process more people as they come in. And we still got to do a better job of, once again, trying to get people to certify, really see how we can do a better job getting people on the website and finding other ways of assisting people so that they can get the benefits they need. But the trend is in the right direction. We are catching up and things are getting better.
Looks like the trend is definitely going in the right direction, but those numbers are still incredible. So on Monday, there were—
Right, but hold on. Let me also clarify. So we didn't have 673,000 people call us on Monday the 30th. We didn't have 231,000 people call us on Monday the 27th. Some people will get on and they will call over and over and over and over again. So that's not a representation of all the individuals that are calling. It's just the amount of calls that we get.
Right, understood. In fact,
Okay.
we did talk to people who said they called 300 times. So
Right.
Those numbers are, but there is still, like you said, a huge gap between the number of calls you're receiving and the calls you're able to process. So here's a suggestion from somebody dealing with those phone calls. And I know you've said ideally somebody should go online to recertify, but what they're asking is if they've already been approved and they're just doing that weekly recertification, they want to know if there isn't a separate phone line they could call or a different extension so that they would just go over there, for a very simplified process, and they're not having to be one of these 280,000 callers on Monday. Or not,
right, and that's why
calls.
Right, and that's why we really want to see if people can go online to certify. You can use a smartphone. Like I said, we have an online instructional video for how to do that. And here's the issue. If you're going to go to a phone line, you're going to get the same people. And so our job is really to say, okay, if you want to certify, the process only takes a few minutes. We need to do a better job, and we are trying to do a better job of really bringing those resources to people online. That's really the best way to get through this situation. But I'll also say, as more and more people get into the system and get familiar with the situation, like I said, you're seeing those call numbers go down, you're seeing the calls taken go up, and we are doing a better job, and we are able to respond to more people and help them out.
Yeah, all right. So that was very helpful when you're talking about the tips in terms of basically Monday's your busiest day. There's other times to call. Do you have any other tips to provide folks who are just so frustrated, who have done that, called 300 times and can't get through? Is there anywhere they can go? Is there any email, anywhere they can send something like a help, please get back to me. I've tried all these things.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the questions that we actually get can be answered at our website at dws.state.nm.us, or excuse me, .us. We've actually got a frequently asked questions page with like a bunch of the regular questions that we normally get. And I think part of the situation with this pandemic is that people really want someone to talk to. They want to be told, hey, this is what's going on. They want to be assured that things are going to be okay. And that's understandable, right? There's a lot of people out there that are going through some tough times, and they want to know, they want to hear someone as a voice tell them this is going to be okay. Here's the answer. But what I would say is a lot of the questions that you're going to have are going to be available at our FAQ portion of our website at dws.state.nm.us. Furthermore, we've got a chat bot feature on our website that allows you to get the answers to some of our most frequently asked questions. Now, we are working on a live chat feature. And as soon as we get the rest of our folks this week trained up and on the phones, we're going to start the process of figuring out how we can make a live chat feature work. The strategy right now that we're thinking of is just start that for technical assistance. But if we can get that moving, obviously in the future, we want to move to that live chat ability, because that's a way for a lot of people to get some pretty efficient information, but we're going to have to train our people up on how to do that and then make sure they have all the information that they need to be able to help people. The last thing I'll say too is that we've had an issue with passwords. That's been one of our biggest roadblocks in terms of using the website. So if you have your password reset, I'm going to give you 3 pieces of advice, and this is what we're trying to tell people over and over. Number 1, you'll get an email from us with instructions on how to get a new password. There will be a link in that email to make sure you can enter a temporary password. Please click on that link. Don't separately start up a new browser and try to log in that way, because there's security measures in that link that will allow us to know that you are who you are because you sent it to your email address. So use that link. It will bring up a new browser through that link. Number 2, you will get a temporary password in your email. Please don't copy and paste it into the new browser that came up through the link. Please write it down and enter it separately. Third, once it allows you to create a new password, please remember your password, write it down, put it somewhere, and don't forget it, because here's the issue. If you enter a password incorrectly 3 times, it will lock you out of your account, and then we'll have to go through that process all over again. So if people could kind of follow those best practices when getting a new password, that would really help us out a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Secretary, we've been talking a lot about applying online, but we got a question from a frustrating reader who has mailed and faxed their information in. Mm-hmm. And they write, I have been self-quarantined for 5 weeks. My job is on hold from my present employer because of the shutdown order. I have applied to Workforce Solutions every week, mailed and faxed my documents to the office. As of April 29th, there has been no response. They say that they've called numerous times only to be disconnected. Do you have any suggestions for folks in that category?
I do. There's 2 things I would say right away. Number 1, please remember to continue to certify. This person is probably in the adjudication bucket that I talked about earlier. So the people that we are still waiting to process, we're getting about 10 times the amount of mail and faxes that we normally get. And I'm once again very, very proud of the workers at Workforce Solutions. We've had AmeriCorps staffers, we've had paralegals that are volunteering to work in our mailroom. And that's a tough situation for a lot of people because you're touching a lot of things. So we make sure they have gloves, we make sure they have masks, we make sure they have sanitary facilities available to them, but they're doing the best that they can and working as hard as they can to process all the documents that are coming in. But they are coming in. So number 1, certify every week, because when we get to you, when we process your claim, as you've certified, you're going to get all that money from the weeks from before. So please continue to remember to do that. And if you could be patient with us, we are working through these things. Now, I will say one more thing. Our people might try to give you a call to clarify some of the information that you gave in, and so we could get everybody on the same page and get you your benefits. However, we're going to be calling you from an 877 number. And a lot, because that's the system that we use for our call center. A lot of times people won't answer those numbers because they think it's a salesperson or a spammer or whatever. Just understand that if an 877 number calls your your phone and it might show up as spam, please try to pick it up and answer, because that may be our office trying to get in touch with you proactively to fix your issue. We've noticed that that's been an issue with a lot of folks who have been frustrated with the process. So if you could give us some patience, if you remember to keep certifying, and if you could pick up an 877 number, if you're waiting for some clarity on this, that might be our people looking to help you out.
Another reader writes, I applied for unemployment but ran into issues trying to answer questions due to limitations on the site for unusual circumstances. Because of that, they say they are unable to file and have been unable to get through on the phone. For folks that are in kind of unusual circumstances, how can they get assistance to complete the process?
Sure. Once again, that's going to be part of that process. We do have some people that are in unusual circumstances. We've done everything we can to try to make sure we're systemizing the approval process for what we call adjudication, so that the process folks were going in. But there are always going to be some people with different situations. As I pointed out, there's still sometimes we're waiting for documents from other states. We're waiting for documents from the Department of Defense. If you've had a military job in the past, we may need to get a hold of you, or you may need to get a hold of us. Once again, I would recommend, if you have to call, try calling in on Thursday or Friday, because that's generally the days when we have the most people available. And then also understand, we may try to call you back. Please try to answer those 877 numbers when our people are trying to call you. Because if we can get you on the phone and figure out what the issues are, a lot of times our folks who are really, really good at knowing a lot of these very specific different situations can get that fixed up for you.
Thank you.
Yep. Secretary, we promised to keep this to 45 minutes and we are at that limit. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't get to?
Yeah, I want to thank all the New Mexicans who have worked with us. I want to thank all of the state employees, the folks at Workforce Solutions who have been just busting their tails. Almost everybody in this process is working overtime. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your intelligence. Thank you for the compassion you're showing people from New Mexico. Thank you to the other state employees out there who are really helping us with this situation. Your work is appreciated. And I just want to let people know, once again, our promise is to continue to do what the governor says, to take every person extremely seriously, to treat everyone with respect, and to try to get better every single day. And we are continuing to do that.
Thank you, Secretary. And thank you to everyone for joining us. I just want to let you know that there will be a story recapping what you just heard in Friday's edition of the Albuquerque Journal. Have a good day. Stay safe.